So I've been listening to this podcast on neuroscience, and I've learned something super cool, and I didn't know before about how to learn and potentially change behavior as an adult. So one thing to know is that between when you're born to the age of 25, you learn pretty passively. You can just show up to a thing, and you're probably gonna, just because you're there, you're probably gonna learn from it. And just to be clear, learning in more psychological term, it means that you are gaining knowledge, skill, or some kind of ability, and kind of that knowledge structure change. At the neuroscience level, there's neuroplasticity. There's actually kind of quote unquote rewiring of your neurons. So one thing to know is that from 0 to 25, you're okay. So backstory is that as a kid, when you're born to the world, you have a bunch of these random neuron connections, and they're kind of all over the place, and there's no clear kind of pattern. That's why kind of babies frail around, things like that. But as you kind of learn more and more, certain neural pathways become straightened, and some of them becomes weaker. So the ones you pay attention to becomes stronger and stronger. Ones you don't becomes weaker and weaker. So now as a kid, that kind of happens pretty passively. But as an adult, so 25 and above, in order to help kind of loosen those pathways that was already kind of there, you have to do certain things to kind of prime your brain to be ready for a learning state. So let's say you're kind of just you picking up a new book and you kind of skim it, and you skim, you kind of mind wander sometimes, start skimming sometime, you kind of read it, and then you put it away. It's probably not likely that you've learned anything, meaning that your brain hasn't changed in significant ways. Maybe you read the words, but the pattern, what you've learning, hasn't kind of stamped itself into your brain. So according to neuroscience principles, the way to really help prime your brain to start learning is a gated approach. You really have to do certain specific things to release specific chemicals in your brain so that your neurons that's already kind of firing together and stuck in that way kind of is primed to be ready to do new things. So either become even stronger in how they connect or become weaker in how they connect. So the first key thing is you have to really become alert and pay attention. So this is where intentions really come in, actually. So let's say you're in a corporate training, you're kind of forced to go learn something. You're like, I'm just here, whatever. And you kind of sit there and you're sitting there for all day. Yeah, nothing probably has changed in your brain. But if you're like, you know what, this is my opportunity to really learn something because my company's already giving me this learning tip, or I want to go on this retreat. You want to set the intention of I'm here to learn. Why is it important to me? And really just settle into that, or write it out, whatever it takes, of why this is important for me to learn and be different from having this experience or reading or learning. That alone would start to kind of release certain chemicals in your brain so that it's ready and more primed to be able to change. So that's super key. The other piece, I talk about alertness. So imagine you're going to this learn thing, you're half asleep. Obviously, that's not going to help your learning. So other ways to do this is to sleep well the night before or the many few nights ahead of time, so that by the time you come to this training, whatever, you're super alert and focused. Or the other way is obviously kind of caffeine. We all kind of know that, but this is kind of specific that if you need to be kind of open your mind, be willing to learn, and also being alert enough to really focus, that's going to really help you learn. The other piece is that you want to actually focus hardcore for around, maximum, the recommendation is 90 minutes, because then it's kind of too much. But you want to kind of be focused at the maximum level as you're trying to learn that new thing for 90 minutes. No distraction, turn off your phone. There's no multitasking right now. To really change your brain, you want to be all in for 90 minutes. And then the super duper key to then lock it in quickly is you want to, right after that 90-minute learning cycle, super deep dive focus learning cycle, you want to do either what's called non-sleep deep rest, so a super chill meditation, or take a nap, actually, because a 20-minute nap. Because if you do a 20-minute nap, you don't go into deep sleep, you just kind of stay in the shallow side, but that's okay. It's good enough to help your brain actually consolidate those the new neuron firing patterns Or you do what's called like get an optic flow, where you walk or bike or run or roll, whatever, in a forward motion. So you're kind of like doing this movement for 20 minutes in a forward motion, and not like listening to a podcast, not doing anything in particular, just kind of having that forward movement and letting your mind wander. So we think that mind wandering is kind of bad for us, but actually, if it's right, it's happening right after really intense learning focus time period. It's actually going to help you later on in locking in that neural pathway even quicker than if you just learn and then go straight into doing something else. If you learn and then let your mind wander for 20 minutes to 30 minutes, that's going to be even more beneficial for you. So those are some cool new tips I've learned about neuroscience to help you learn even faster.